I'm Cody DePablo.
And I'm Michael Weatherly.
And today we're talking Season 3, Episode 15, Head Case.
Head case.
Welcome to Off Duty, an NCIS rewatch podcast. This week on the show, we're talking Season 3, Episode 15, Head Case. While busting 3 Navy enlisted men running an automotive chop shop, Gibbs, Tony, and Ziva find a severed head in a cooler in the trunk of one of the cars. The gang find the rest of the body, the story, the answers, and the bad actors. At today's time of this episode's release on February 7th, 2006, Japanese Princess Kiko is pregnant with her 3rd child. The Pink Panther starring Steve Martin has its theatrical release. Egypt announces the discovery of an intact pharaonic tomb in the Valley of the Kings, the first discovered since King Tutankhamun in 1922. Now, did I hit any of those? Did I butcher any of those?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, because would you mind giving me notes so that I can go back and actually do it the way you would do it, which is perfect.
I think you could just call him King Tut.
King Tut? Well, but it's Tutankhamun.
When you say that, nobody knows what the heck you're talking about.
Okay, fine, but okay,
that's like when you say it's in Bogota, Colombia.
Bogota, Colombia, but it's the reality. I mean, I'm going to have to Americanize it for you.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Who was in the first Pink Panther movie that was a guest star on NCIS?
Oh.
Multiple guest stars.
Who?
Robert Wagner.
You are so right.
Yeah, everyone should go and watch that right now. Leave this podcast, go watch that, and then come back. This will still be here.
So while arresting a group of Navy sailors who were operating an illegal automotive chop shop, Ziva finds a severed head in a trunk of a recently stolen car. Abby matches the head to a Navy captain who died 4 months prior, sending the team on a hunt for a possible human chop shop and the captain's remaining body parts. What do you remember from shooting this episode?
I remember the guest stars were great.
Do you remember that moment? And it's a really good moment. We are discovering this head, right, in the back of the trunk. And you come right behind me and I'm staring at it. And you say, oh, yeah, it's always hard when it's your first, when you find this kind of thing, body part. It's always hard the first time. She goes, it's especially hard when you know the person.
Mine was a motorcycle accident in Baltimore. I thought I was just picking.
Trust me, it's far worse when you know the person. Do you remember that? Why do you laugh?
Like Dinozo is like, oh yeah, I know it must be hard when when you see something like this for the first time. And Ziva says, yes, especially when you know the person. but this is the thing in my mind. Then I hear you like turning and going, just kidding. Like, just kidding. In my mind, the joke, you don't know why things amuse you the way they do, but I can just, that's the kind of thing that would have pissed off the crew because I would have been laughing for 5 minutes.
By the way, and this is the thing that you and I did a lot of, like you'd start laughing and I'd be like, this is so inappropriate. Why are you laughing? And then your laughter.
Because it's so wildly inappropriate.
Would then make me laugh and then we wouldn't. Do you remember there was one time you and I were like in between scenes and it was so good. And
oh God,
we were laughing about something and we couldn't stop laughing and you were having orange juice and then the orange juice started coming out of your nose.
It came out of my nose.
And then I started laughing at the fact that it started coming out of your nose, and then we both couldn't stop laughing, and then they had to take like a 10-minute break.
Oh God, it's so much when that happens to me. What do you think a year of NCIS thinks, how many Palmers do you think they give this episode?
You know what? I don't know, but I'm going to guess it's probably 7 or 8.
It only gets 6 Palmer heads.
What? I'm surprised by that.
Everyone should go check out this guy's website because there's a little thing called, man, this show is old. McGee mentions the TV show The X-Files. It's not just a dated reference now because it experienced a revival in 2016, but the original run to which McGee refers was 1993 to 2001. I want to see what he says that Ziva proposition. If the glue sticks.
You're asking me to believe a sailor jacked a car with a head in the trunk and that he didn't know it?
If the glue sticks.
Shoe fits.
If the what?
If the glue sticks.
If the glue sticks. What's the saying?
If the shoe fits.
Oh, if the shoe fits, yeah.
I'm going to introduce our next guest. I want you to guess who it is. We're going to pretend we're on Smartless. He was on Ally McBeal, Ned and Stacey, and Grey's Anatomy. On NCIS, he played director Jerome Craig and acted as NCIS director during Leon Vance's leave of absence in season 10. Who do we have coming?
Greg Germann.
You knew. Let's bring him in here.
Leon, hey, I was just, I'm so sorry. Belgian chocolates, what am I thinking? Maybe he didn't find it so ridiculous.
6 hours, Deputy Director.
That's director. No. May I step in, Agent Gibbs? This is a political nightmare gift wrapped in red tape. Risks aren't my specialty. May I come in, Miss Shudo? We're having dinner tomorrow night. The wife is okay with it. Bitter with just the right amount of bite, just a breath of cacao. I'll just be upstairs rearranging my Zen rock garden.
The episode called Shiva, I believe, was your first episode.
My disc. Oh, Leon. Hey, I was just, I'm so sorry, Mr. Secretary.
The reason I bring that up is that script
because it was
written,
the best episode that NCIS has ever done.
It is actually considered in a fan ranking. It is considered one of the best episodes.
Really?
In part because you were there, but also
of course, yeah.
in part because Matt Craven was there. No, in part it was because Cote DePablo got a hold of the script and she came over to me and she was like, have you read it? And I was like, oh, Cote, I mean, it's the next, we're shooting this one. That's the next one. I haven't that's next week. I'm not thinking about next week. And she said, you will read it like at lunch. You will take, so I went back to my trailer. I read it at lunch and then I came over and I knocked on her door right before we were going back. And I said, okay. And she said, we are changing it. And so then we went over to Mark Harmon's trailer. Mm-hmm. Now this is season 10 of the show. Most people in season 10 don't give a fuck what they, just tell me where to stand. Yeah. And I'll read off a cue card. It's like Ron Burgundy time. It's like, fuck you, San Diego. And then, and we went over there and Cote made her, points. And then Mark, Cote and I went upstairs to the writer's room and the producers. And we sat down with the writers and we had a 45-minute meeting about that script, and Cote was as passionate as she is right now in this. But anyway, I'm curious. By the way,
I always have to apologize for my passions because sometimes those passions are always misinterpreted.
No, but it's so good that you give a shit.
Yeah, that is good.
But I'm curious if you have any, I know it's through the mists of time, like 14 years ago or whatever, but did you have any initial memories of kind of coming in and floating around that set? Because that set was also kind of an interesting place.
Well, I mean, your experience of that set, like my experience of Ally is or Grey's or whatever it is different because, you're there every day and every week. And so I'm just dropping in. And often, as you know, when you you're dropping into a show that's on it's operating on, like that one is or was, you're kind of stepping into a world that's you are stepping onto a treadmill that's going. But that, my memory at least of that, it was a lot of my stuff was with Mark and with you, and it was very, it was so friendly, I thought, and I felt like they wanted me there, which as an actor, you often feel like I'm here. I hope they like me, okay, and that's me anyway. I'm terribly insecure in that way, so I felt it was really fun to do because I felt like and it was also very. That character ended up being, for me at least, it's kind of a funny character. He's a fish out of water, really.
6 hours later.
So, you think it was intercepted?
6 hours, Deputy Director.
That's director.
I was shocked that the spinoff they talked to me about never happened. I don't know if you know anybody, but I was thinking that there was going to be a half-hour single camera called Jerome, and we were going to follow him. He continues to be put in these positions in the government where he doesn't belong.
Well, I printed up the very beginning of your IMDb television thing, and I see ABC after school specials, and you in a high school after school special called Narc.
I think it was called High School Narc.
High School Narc.
And I was the one that the
Billy.
Narc was after. I was the bad seed. And you know who else was in that, who I saw not too long ago? I was in Venice with my son, and walking down the street, and this guy came up to me and he said, Greg, you know, if you remember me, but hey, man, it's Viggo. How are you? It's Viggo Mortensen, who had like a small part in that. He was like this long-haired kid. He was very sweet. And I said, wait, and I think I probably said, but you're Viggo Mortensen. How do I know you? We did High School Narc together.
Oh my God.
Narc. Now, wait, I have to ask, because your son is so cool and having a lot of fun in the chosen occupation. But is that does that make you feel good for a moment when Viggo says, hey, Greg? And then your son's like,
it took him a minute to realize that Viggo was the same guy in, Lord of the Rings or something. And then that was impressive. But my son Asa now, he's an actor, and he's on, he's on Gen V. So he's lecturing me a lot about acting and show business.
Sure.
Which is
Were
great.
you very much were you very supporting about the
No, I'm not supportive of anything. I never really, I wasn't encouraging or discouraging, and I never brought him to things, like premieres or whatever. And then he just got into it about 5 or 6 years ago. And my sister at one point, I said, God, I don't know if it's, I don't want it, it's his. I don't want it to be, I don't want him to feel like it's his. I don't want him to feel like he's my kid or anything like that. And she said, if I was resistant to it in some way, and she said, if you were a plumber and he wanted to become a plumber, you'd take him to work with you, you'd be so proud. And I thought, that's right. And so now he's like a colleague. We were just in New York, and we, went to see a bunch of plays together, and he's,
wow.
It's fantastic. It's just, we survived the teenage tunnel of darkness, and
Yes.
and I think that's Michael. When I remember you and I on the set sharing stories about things like that with kids, and
Yes.
but we're out of that, and he's in his 20s, and he's a colleague, and I learn a lot from him about the craft or a business, because he's into the craft, and it's I don't know if this makes sense, but sometimes when you hear a parent or spouse or a friend say, I'm really proud of this person, and I always have trouble with that, because I think I'm not. It's really what you're saying is, I'm proud that this person, like a spouse, has chosen me. It makes me feel good about myself that this person who's so amazing is part of my life, and that's the way I feel about my son. He's extraordinary, and so I'm kind of proud of myself that I'm part of his life, I think, is the truth.
I so recognize that feeling. I stopped working for 2 years. Just 2 years ago, I put down my SAG card, and I needed to take a break. And I have to credit COVID, the terrible
Right.
COVID, but it was the first time in my career that I had an imposed, like, you must stop working. You cannot. You are quarantined from sets and cameras and your fellow crazy actor people. All of a sudden, I realized I had no idea how to live real life. Without a call sheet, I was fucking clueless. And so I'm scrubbing toilets, and I'm making pancakes with the kids, and I'm doing everything. And I was like, oh, I should be doing more of this. So I went back to work, and I was like, when my contract is over, I'm going to lay down my SAG card. So for the last 2 years, I've just been Mr. Mom, I've been doing my Michael Keaton impression. And I went to go do my first job very recently, and my phone was ringing in my pocket, and I was out in LA just checking into my hotel, and it was my son. And I said, hey, buddy, what are you doing? And he had tears coming down. He's 10 years old. This is my youngest son. Tears. And he goes, I miss you so much, Dad. And I was like, oh, kill me. But it was that moment, Greg, exactly of like, I've never been loved like that.
That's
like
right.
I didn't know what to do with that love. I
That's
was
right.
like, oh my God, this is awesome, but terrifying. Wait, but if I love somebody, that means I can't run away.
Yeah. I remember once, and I remember the quote because it was such a remarkable thing you said, Michael, to me once. You said, I could live without a lot of things, but I can't live without that love. He goes, I would bypass anything and I could live in a tiny little studio, but I could not live without that. And I remember thinking like, yeah, that's pretty incredible for a person that's always been so remarkably busy and that couldn't unplug. You had a really tough time unplugging. And so that realization must have been one, incredible, but also,
Yeah, I know. I was always, I was on that hamster wheel, that treadmill.
Mm-hmm.
What were you going to say, Greg, before?
Well, just that it's when that story makes me feel like you won the lottery. When your kids tell you that, they want to spend time with you or that they love you. And I mean, that's just like, that's all we want. We just want them to, to do that, just like that recent trip to New York with Asa. But he wants to hang out with me at all. I'm just so, it's the very, very fast. I can't, everything else can be kind of, up and down, but if that's working, then I'm satisfied.
Well, that's really funny that you say that because I always wanted to hang out with my parents.
Oh, really?
Wow. And now that you say that to me, I guess that they must have felt so good because I always felt like they were my friends. I always felt like, and of course, trust me, we've gone through, ups and downs and relationships change and you go through really weird dynamics and challenges, certainly. But I always wanted to like, hey, let's get together. Or how about we plan a vacation? Or, like for my mom's 60th, like we went to Turkey and I said, hey, let's do this. And we took like a big trip, like 3 weeks together, and,
was it that way when you were a teenager? Like when did that start? Was it always your memory? Or would they say that? Would they say, no, that's not my memory?
No, it was always a memory. And I have to say, I'm lucky that I come from a family that always sort of established that bond where I had extended family too. So like, for example, my mom's one of 8 and my dad's one of 3. And I was very, very close to my grandmother. And so for me, the bonds are somehow solidified by, we've taught each other how to communicate. We've taught each other to share. You earn trust, as you know, and all that stuff. But it's an ongoing thing. And it's always, and sometimes you're going to be like, no, man, it's too much. It's too much, but it is a beautiful thing when you say, hey, I'm so proud of that, or I can't believe he wants to spend time with that. And, I have to say thank you because you just allowed me to see how my parents felt about me saying like, hey, let's hang out together because I miss you or I want to talk to you or let's laugh or, let's cuddle or I still do that. I did that with my grandparents up until I was like 21.
I'm always, I have, my son will call me, like once a day practically. And I try not to, I really want to, let him come to me because otherwise I would just be, way too overbearing, I'm sure. And maybe I am, I don't know.
I'm curious when you were, when you're on a series or you're sort of on a work train, like, when you're just kind of going gig to gig to gig and then coming back into town, auditioning for 3 things. And then all of a sudden you're like, hey, here's your ticket to Vancouver, Greg.
Right.
Did you ever get into a place where you wanted it to stop for a second so that you could breathe? Or did you always recognize when it stops, it will stop for me? Because I always thought I can't stop because one day they're not going to hire me. So I have to work as much as I can. And I did not take as good care of myself as I maybe might have,
I'm probably like you in that and still, I mean, one, I like doing it. I mean, I feel really lucky that I didn't, I reference my son constantly, but I've told him that this job, this career, the work is when you're out of work. Because the job is amazing. It's an amazing job, especially when you're into the craft of it and all that. It's I mean, I really believe in it. I'm kind of, I really believe that even when material could be, whether it's Shakespeare or I'm on TV or whatever I'm doing, I really believe in the power of it. I'm a little corny in that way. And so the job is not the hardest part to me. The hardest part is when you're out of work, and then how do you keep yourself so that you're really healthy and really engaged and kind of primed. So I really love to work, and I wouldn't mind. I don't think I've ever gotten I've gotten exhausted for sure, but not like I want to step back and turn in my SAG card so much like that. I love it, and I also love actors. Actors are, and that was moving to me, Cody, to on the picket line to see all these. My wife is a teacher and an amazing teacher, and she's not in the business, and I've just told her, actors. Most actors that I know who are good actors, it's not the stereotype. It's like that some people might think of as actors, narcissists and all that stuff. They're really generous, lots of humility.
It's so great that you remind us and the people that are certainly listening. So many artists get such a bad rap, but I really do believe that sometimes when I talk about when I talk about personally my tribe, like when I bump into my tribe, like my friends that I went to conservatory with, or my friends that I started with in New York, like just the idea of sitting down at a table and sharing a tea and being like, man, I had such a tough time with that. Or, the idea that you can dissect an emotional moment and get emotional about it and revisit that and have the great big luxury of then being able to pour it into the work and certainly share that moment. I agree with you wholeheartedly that it's that it's such a privilege,
Yeah.
And I think I for one can say that I've needed to step away because I feel like I lost a little bit of that place where my love for it had gotten somewhere in there, whether it was my own personal stuff that had not been addressed, and therefore I lost some of that. Like, where am I going? Where am I going? You know what I mean? And but it's the thing that I always loved about acting. It's the thing that I always loved about revisiting the work.
All television always comes into these kind of procedural lanes. I mean, not all television, but Cody and I are getting ready to do this. Speaking of spinoffs, we're doing a 10-episode thing for Paramount Plus, where it's just our two characters running around Europe, and we don't
Who knows?
solve a
Maybe
crime.
there's a space for Jerome.
I think Jerome, if you're running around Europe, for sure, Jerome.
And by the way, like Jerome is stuck in some sort of like political, like what?
Yeah, he needs help. He's stuck. I mean, you guys, look, if we could pause this for a second, just so I can pitch myself, really. I'm doing this for one reason and one reason only. The ticket to Vancouver is fine, but the ticket to Europe is much better.
Wait, I have a question for you, Greg. So you're a music theater guy.
Well, I've done some,
You've done more than one, and you originated a part for Stephen Sondheim.
Right. And I just was in New York just last week. I went to Cabaret, and I saw Terrence Mann, who's, kind of I don't know, such a legend really in musical theater. And he was in Assassins. So Terry Mann was in Assassins, Victor Garber, Lee Wilkoff, Jonathan Hadari, Deborah Monk, Annie Golden, like people who are really good. Now, that was the first musical I'd done. And it was Stephen Sondheim. And in that show, I played John Hinckley. And John Hinckley in that show sings a love song to Jodie Foster. And it's the love song of the show. It's kind of the love ballad of the show. And I start out by accompanying myself on the guitar. Now, I was terrified because I'm an actor, and I was an actor who can sing, but not like Victor Garber and those guys. I mean, those guys are really the real deal. And there was a moment where we were doing a rehearsal in a rehearsal room under fluorescent lights. There's maybe 20 people there, like designers and whatnot, and Sondheim and, Jerry Zach's the director. And it got to so it's just folding chairs really, and we're kind of going through the show, and it got to my song, and so I start accompanying myself on the guitar and playing it, and then the song gets very emotional, And I can look back and I see the other actors are sort of standing where the folding chairs are, sort of watching me do this number, Victor and Terry and Lee and all these guys. And I could see they're looking at me. I was imagining their faces were like, wow, this is going to be Greg's last day. This is sad. Jerry Zaks at the time had sort of a reputation that somebody would get fired during rehearsals. And it's clearly was going to be me. I mean, I was the one. And I finished the song, and I mean, my knees were literally shaking. And Sondheim jumped up and gave me a hug. And he said, see, you can do it. And then about a year and a half ago or two, during COVID, we did a Zoom anniversary thing with the whole cast and Sondheim right before he died. And Annie Goldman and I sang that song. It's a duet. She's Squeaky Fromm, and she sings the love song to Charles Manson. So you have John Hinckley singing to Jodie Foster and Squeaky Fromm singing to Charles Manson. Yeah, it's really worth listening to. It's really good. The song is. And so we sang it on Zoom for Steve. And he cried.
Oh.
And so things like that happen to you in your career, a moment, or you work with somebody and you feel like, okay, I'm done. If I never did anything else, if I would feel like, okay, I've accomplished something. That's so that, but I'm when you say musical theater guy, I'm not like those guys are. Those guys are the real deal. I'm an actor who can sing, but not.
Yeah, but I know plenty of music theater guys, and no one has a story like that. You know what I mean?
No,
that's a good story.
They sang for Stephen Sondheim, and then all of a sudden he got up, and just when you think you're going to be fired, he gives you a hug, and he goes, "See, you can do it."
That was extraordinary.
Epic moment.
Yeah, that was epic. Yeah, yeah.
And it is such a short ride from Billy in High School Narc
It's
to
a
that
short
moment.
It was a short. It
always goes back to, to High School Narc.
That's right.
It
High
was,
School Narc. Well, when you
we
start
were-
at the top, Cody, once you've done High School Narc, it's like Jodie Foster starting with Taxi Driver. I started with High School Narc. I mean, I think it's kind of similar.
Okay,
Yeah.
wait, but this is a good area just to explore for a second. So sitcoms, dramas, dramedies, soaps, stage, there is a ghettoization that takes place. Like casting directors are like, oh no, Greg's a sitcom actor. He's not, we can't have him come in for anything serious. And you're like, no, Stephen Sondheim hugged me. I can be, I can be emotive and serious.
Right.
But you do get kind of, it's just easier for agents and everybody on the breakdown list to be like, oh no, Greg is this.
Right.
So, did you ever feel trapped by that?
No, and in fact, on Alley, when we first started doing Alley McBeal, there was might have been the first season. There was like a thing in some People magazine remember magazines? There was a magazine.
I remember those.
Yeah, there was a magazine called People magazine, and there was a thing about. I don't know how I ended up with this, but there was a thing about actors who play roles that are like, I was kind of this, not evil, but kind of a likable, unlikable guy, a charming, but, kind of a unlikable guy. And there was different, and they had me, the only one I remember is Jack Nicholson was one of them. But I was in a group of like 5, and they had me like on TV. And one of those actors, it might have been Jack Nicholson, said, if you can get a niche, great. Like, there's nothing wrong with a niche, having a little thing that you're known for and that you do really well. I mean, any good actor can do lots of different things, but you don't have to take. I don't have to take every job that's offered. So, I don't mind being thought of as somebody who's kind of being lazy and not really thinking it through might think of me.
I always had a hard time trying to, like, when the audition was for. I remember auditioning for Time Cop. And Bryan Singer was doing Time Cop for ABC.
Right.
And it was a series based on the Jean-Claude Van Damme classic. And what could go wrong? Time Cop. And so at that time, I was in the ABC world. I was like doing lots of stuff with ABC. And so I went to screen test. And when I walked into that, hallway down in Century City at the old ABC building, and sat down in my chair. All around me, were like for the 4 or 5 other guys that were Time Cop,
material
hopefuls. They were all wearing boots, blue jeans with the cuffs kind of kicked up a little, tight blue jeans, white T-shirts, bulgy muscles, and they were either wearing their leather jacket or the leather jacket was casually draped over one shoulder. And
what were you wearing?
I was wearing a double-breasted suit.
No, you weren't. Were you really?
I was, and a polka dot tie. A Perry Ellis. If you remember Perry Ellis. Perry Ellis from the 80s, but I had this polka dot tie.
You had a take on the characters, what you're saying.
Yes. And
a different take.
Yeah, a different take.
But this is to the point of, I know I'm not that guy. I don't look like a guy who's like got, scab, like his hands are all calloused and he works at a construction site. That's no one's going to buy that.
Right.
But Cary Grant with a time machine, that's where I was going. I was like, how about if it's this? It's Tom Hanks with a time machine. And maybe, what the heck are we going to do? It's Chandler Bing with a time machine.
Hey, what the heck are we going to do?
And so it's Jerry Seinfeld with a time machine. Yeah. And so, but I always, out of an insecurity, I always tried to move things towards comedy and towards making fun of myself. And I think maybe that's one of those, making Fish a relatable guy that, like, on the surface, or just looking at the sort of facts, you would say, that's not a nice person.
Right.
That is a difficult human being.
Right.
But the way when you embody, you see a struggle, the human struggling behind that, then, and I always felt doing DiNozzo that there was a similar thing where he's the office Lothario or a cat or whatever, he's this lounge lizard kind of guy.
What'd you find, Tony? Tony!
Huh? Zamfir. It's a master of the pan flute.
There's not a lot of redeeming qualities to him, but, and one of the things that I found with Cody when we started playing scenes is that she was like peeking around that mask and seeing other things that maybe I didn't even see at the time, but it just strengthens the layers of a performance. And then you have this new kind of superpower because you can kind of do anything when you find a character. And that is the great thing about doing series television day in, day out.
I agree.
Get to really explore that
it's
character.
the greatest gift. It's the greatest gift. I always say, especially if you get to latch onto a character that you truly want to explore for a very long time.
I think I'm always suspicious of when, I write to, and when somebody, or when you're playing a role like you're saying, that you did, Michael, or I guess Fish, or even like Karasik on Grey's Anatomy, that are characters that like you said, on the page might look like, oh, these guys aren't nice guys or something. You'll often hear this character isn't likable, but I don't know. I mean, that's kind of part of our job. You take somebody. Our job is to kind of look at some human being, and it's not compassion, or maybe it's empathy, but to understand why they're doing the things they're doing, because at the end of the day, we're all kind of come from the same place. And
that's the thing that we talked about a lot at NCIS, and I think the reason why we always ran to the writer's room, after so many years, we'd just be like, wait a minute, we never just gave up or just said, like, whatever, just say your lines, stand on your mark, and just that explains the longevity of the show, honestly. I mean, when you guys, they have actors like you guys, and that you care about what you're doing. And that the show stays on the air. I understand the notion of feeling like you have to apologize for your passion, because, you're passionate, you come on strong, and that's good because it means you're still into it. The opposite would be awful if you read it, okay, it's one of these, and we say the thing, I get the check, and I go home, and I'm going to take a vacation to Barbados. You still take the vacation to Barbados, for sure, and you put the craft services in your purse, but still, you care about it.
I remember when Charles Durning came to do a guest spot in season 2.
All right, come with me, Mr. Yost. Water cooler's right over here.
It's not a water cooler, it's called a scuttlebutt.
I had some great scenes with Charlie. Oh my God. And Sasha Alexander had this little dance that she did with him in the squad room.
It brings back a night of tropical splendor. It brings back a memory.
We had 100 people coming from the production office and everywhere just to watch behind camera. There was like an audience of 100 people from all over. But Durning went by on his way home. We did this scene. He was tears and great. Then on his way home, he goes by the craft service table and he's taken all the Fritos.
I love that.
Jam. And he goes,
you could never have enough bags of Fritos. You can never, those little bags, those are priceless.
The little bags, they're perfect. And I mean, my other Durning story is the very first day he was wearing a green T-shirt that said, "Fight me, I'm Irish." And we were in the elevator and I had to take him off the elevator because I had gone down to get him from the front area. And that was our thing. So we got into the elevator for the first rehearsal and he goes, "You know any Edgar Allan Poe?" And I was like, "Oh, like The Raven?" And he goes, "Do you know any?" Ding, the elevator doors open. And then we walk off. And at the beginning, so we did the rehearsal and then we go away and we load to shoot the first, take.
Right.
And we get in there and we're standing there and he goes, "How tall do you think I am?" And he was a very short guy. And I'm like, 5'7". He goes, "Don't fuck with me. How tall do you think I am?" And I go, I don't, ding, the elevator doors open and we get off. So the next take, okay, and now I know it's coming, right? Now I know he's going to fuck with me before the ding. So we get in there and I said, that was pretty good. I thought that was a good take. And he goes, "What?" And I go, "Anyway, sorry." And he goes, "I could beat the shit out of you." Ding! And the door
God, I
opened.
love this.
In a self-sacrificing defense of his forward position.
What?
And so I asked him about it later, and Durning was like, all about keeping it alive, and not starting a scene, but like rolling into the take. And Harmon would do the same thing. He was really great at keeping an energy going.
Oh my God, Harmon was like the king of it. Harmon was the king of like poking the bear right before the scene started. And you were like, "Why the fuck are you?" And then he'd be like, like poke you again with a toothpick. And you'd be like, "Whoa, that like emotionally, that's stinging me." And he'd be like, "All right, let's do it." And you'd be like, "What?" And I mean, we came from like another world in the theater. You come in, you do the work and blah, blah, blah. But here you're constantly doing the take and you're constant and you don't get that beginning, middle and end that, for example, a play gives you. So you constantly have to revive the emotion. You constantly have to give it a little bit of CPR. And so some actors feel that they have to throw the toothpick at you so they can like, "Oh, I feel it." And then there you go. You know what I mean?
I remember Mark talking about Durning being on your show. And he was telling me about him, how he was a war hero. Yeah. I didn't know this about him, but what you're saying too makes me think that here's this guy. I mean, this was, I don't know when he passed away, but this was late for him, right? And but it sounds like he still gave a shit, like he still cared about, which is to me is like you're working with somebody like that and they're still like trying to figure it out and they're still messing with it. And years ago I did this movie called Once Around with Jenna Rollins and she told me, she said, every take is a rehearsal, and that means every take you have to fail. Because rehearsal, when you're in the theater, you use rehearsal to kind of fail, to try what doesn't work, not trying to get it right. You try to throw this out and do this. And she would say that, look at your takes, every take that way. So you're not trying to get it. The goal isn't to get it right, to nail it. The goal is to, see if you can fall on your face a little bit. And, there's always editing. They'll figure that out.
We had her on the show and we
oh God, she's.
Yeah,
we loved her.
She was pretty awesome.
She's pretty awesome.
Yeah. She was just pretty like and what a powerhouse of a person, because she sat there completely in her element. It's pretty incredible to watch.
You guys, when you look at I think too, when you've been on a series for a while, and you look back at the people that have crossed your path, like Robert Wagner, Charles Durning, Jenna Rollins. I mean, it's
Germann.
Incredible. Yeah, exactly.
Germann.
Yeah, that's right.
It's time for the Mickey Mouse Club to end. We've run out of time. But
I think we could do like another hour.
Goodbye, Donnie. Goodbye, Billy. Goodbye, Bobby.
I feel like we're just getting started.
Right. Goodbye,
so we'll
Jerome.
just call this one part 1.
There you go.
There we go.
Well, I'll see you guys. I'll see you guys in Europe. I'll
see you in Budapest.
I'll wait for I'll wait for the call. I'm going to sit here by my phone, and I'm going to sit here by my phone until it rings, and I'm sure I'll hold my breath until it rings. Okay.
One of the things that I really loved talking about with Greg, his experience being a father. Wasn't that sweet?
Asa, his incredibly talented son, who is a working actor, a significant working actor.
Yeah.
And a very talented one.
Yeah, sometimes that happens, when kids grow up and they see their parents do a job really, really well, and they're intrigued, and then they get the right, support to be able to pursue dreams in full creativity. And then they have talent. I mean, it's like, when it adds up like that, it could be pretty marvelous.
One of my favorite movies in the 80s was The Fabulous Baker Boys with Beau Bridges and Jeff Bridges. And their father, Lloyd Bridges, that same year, I think, was in a movie called Joe versus the Volcano. And
Which is one of your favorite movies, because you always talk about that movie. It's also one
of my favorites. But it is one of those things where you imagine that the Bridges boys grew up on their dad's, movie sets and TV sets, and like that, a working family of entertainers. And they learned, I don't know any of the Bridges, but Greg Germann is kind of like that in a way. He's a kind of incredibly supportive, doesn't want to crowd the flame, the young flame. Mm-hmm.
And he's just kind of in awe that his kid wants to hang out with him. I think that was so sweet. Game time, black market organ quiz. So how much are these human parts worth on the black market according to the internet? Wow, this is like intense, and I don't think I would ever choose this game as some sort of game. But
now it's blacked out here, so let's talk about the first one: spleen.
God, I mean, I've never even looked something like this. Is so dark.
I think a spleen is worth like $200.
What?
Well, what the fuck do you need a spleen for?
Oh,
you don't.
You know what? Wait 1 second. Okay, fine. I'm not even going to get into the moral aspect of this ridiculousness.
Oh, yeah. No, I skipped past the moral thing and I went straight to what's that worth? I'm playing The Price is Right with body parts.
Okay, great.
But you don't need a spleen to live.
Okay, so how much? How much? What is the answer?
I think it's like $200.
So the answer for how much a spleen is worth on the black market is $500. Okay,
yes,
so let's go into the
See what I mean? One. It's like nothing.
Yeah, but by the way, you got it wrong by a lot.
Bottle of wine. So it's like a good bottle of wine.
Oh God, Michael, that is just. I'm just gonna.
Okay, gallbladder. Knowing what we know, why don't you tell me what you think a gallbladder goes for?
Well, I mean, if a spleen goes for $5, I would imagine a gallbladder goes for something like around $5,500.
Are you $5,000? I think $700. Okay.
$1,200?
I think I'm good at this.
I think you're really good at this, and that just sends shivers. Shivers
are you ready?
Up my spine.
Okay, how much is a liver worth, Cody?
Ooh, that's probably expensive. I don't know, but things are so cheap apparently in the black market that I would.
What do you think?
$3,500.
$25,000. Ooh, $157,000. And here we are thinking 25 grand or $3,000. I'm going to reverse these two. I think we have to start with the kidney first. Knowing that 150 plus thousand for a liver, but you do have two kidneys.
So I would go 60,000, 65,000.
I'm still going to stick around 100,000. And drum roll, please. A liver was 157,000. How much for a kidney? $200,000.
Oh.
We're not. Okay. All right. Now we're going to get into the last one is the most disgusting one. Skin. So here's the question. Is this like a Silence of the Lambs skin where literally they take like, give me the skin, all the skin of a human? Or is this just a little patch of skin? I don't know the answer to that.
But wait, isn't there like some sort of thing now that like you can grow skin, you know?
I bet you can. I'm going to say for skin, 50 grand. Because I got no idea.
You have no idea. I'm going to go 30. I'm going to go 35,000.
$10 per square inch.
Oh, you know what? You pretending that this is like, there's a part of me right now that is looking at you differently. I still love you, but I'm intrigued by this facet of yours that is concerning to me. Concerning. I have a couple of fan questions that I'd like to visit.
Okay.
Gina from Texas, a lot of body parts in this episode. Who made that kind of stuff on NCIS? Do you know that? Because, I mean, there was a team of people that did it, and they were all really, really talented and worked very hard.
In the early seasons, it was always an actor, pretty much. So you'd get to work, and there'd be some poor guy lying in the middle of a field.
Some poor chap.
Naked.
Yeah. I remember one of those nights we were, and I think it was season 3, we were like somewhere in Disney Ranch, and it was really cold. It was like a 3 a.m. or like a 4 a.m. And I was freezing my butt off, and I was wearing a jacket, a turtleneck. I was wearing like little, what do you call those little warm things, hand warmers that they were putting on.
Or whatever.
Yeah, like hot pockets. You'd put them on your shoes. And you and I at one point like looked at somebody who was like literally lying on a ditch, like pretty much, you know, playing a dead body. And I was just like, how can that happen? You know, and it was just like this realization, like, you think you're cold. Holy crap.
Yeah, Louis from Michigan says, I noticed that Tony calls McGee picklehead as an insult. Interesting choice. Was that improvised or scripted? Well, Louis. I don't think anyone in that writing office would ever want to incur the wrath of Sean Murray by writing in a script picklehead.
Yeah, no, I think that was a totally, that was a Weatherly moment.
It feels like something
that a Weatherly would do.
That spontaneously erupted from my rather
disruptive behavior.
my rather grim and shallow imagination. Picklehead. So Rob from Illinois says, why does Abby's lab have a theme, but Ducky's morgue doesn't?
Oh, I think maybe it's just out of respect for the dead. What do you think?
Squad Room had a theme, the little triangle.
Oh, you're right. And you know what? Sometimes when they opened up the elevator, there was another type of music that played. Or maybe I'm wrong. Or maybe that just played in my head.
Ziva's theme was always a very specific thing. It's true.
Which one?
It was all like...
Gibbs' rule of the day is rule number 40. If it seems like someone's out to get you, they are. Now, let's visit this. Let's sort of analyze this, because this could also be an extremely paranoid human being. However, it's Gibbs. So how do you feel about this rule?
I think it's better to err on the side of thinking somebody's out to get you. I have had a few in my life, a few moments of where my common sense and my instincts were screaming at me. And
really?
I was like, I got this. I'm me. I can handle this. And then I get thump, and the universe just goes, don't think you can control the ocean. And I was humbled greatly by my hubris. I had a kind of Pollyanna thing. I think I used to leave my doors unlocked, leave my keys in my car. I just was like, And then I thought, well, if I lose something, then I'll lose it. Or if something gets stolen, it gets stolen. Like, I don't know. Like, nothing's that important. I don't like material things to control me. And it is what it is. Like, let it go.
I know, by the way, I know that side of you. You were very, very trusting when it came to stuff like that. You'd be like, if somebody wants to take it, they take it. In fact, you used to sleep, if I'm not mistaken, with the doors of your house open. And one time they went in and they took like computers and stuff and you were sleeping.
Yeah, I walked into the kitchen at 5 o'clock in the morning and I was like, ooh, where's that draft coming from? And all the doors out to my pool were wide open and my TV was gone. My computer was gone.
Oh, God.
Video camera scared the hell out of me. I just feel like there was a period of time where I just put my trust in the universe, like the universe is right on time. And then that time ended. And now I'm very interested in the people that I do know and love and trust and establishing new friendships. And
I was having a conversation with my mom and I was asking her, sometimes I have like, Mom, I need to interview you, and I'll call her and I'll say like, hey, well, when you were young, what about this memory? And what about this? And, there's so many things about my mom that sometimes we go through day things, like daily things. And you think you know your mom, but then sometimes I'm like, no, but I really want to know more. And so I get very specific and I ask very specific questions. And somewhere in the midst of all of this, interrogating and, in the past couple of years, at one point she said something about trust that fully like pierced my heart. And I remember thinking like, oh my God. And I grew up knowing that my grandfather, so my mother's father, was like her great big love. Like this was a man that she really, truly cherished, like really loved. And it was probably the person, as she describes it growing up as a child, the person that she loved and admired the most. And so she was very little, and at one point she was going down the stairs. And I think it was kind of mutual. Like he really loved her, she really loved him. They had like a special connection. And at one point she was like a couple of steps before she reached like the end of the hallway kind of a thing. And it was a big staircase. And she said something like, oh, Daddy. And she sort of like leaned against her father, and she turned around and her father pushed her the last 2 or 3 steps. And to her horror, she turned to her father and she said, and she started crying. And he almost started crying. And he looked at her and he said, trust no one. And it was such a lesson. And of course, I try to find the beauty in that, because there's a part of me that's like, that is atrocious. Oh my God, that's awful, But there's also a part of that I think when you become a father, when you become a mother, when you become a parent, you want to take care of those you love dearly so much. And the toughest lessons sometimes are the ones that you can teach them by, in a way, almost hurting them, And I don't mean to be a psychologist or any of that, but I guess I'm trying to find the lesson in that from a loving place. And it's a hard thing for me as a mom today and as a daughter to reconcile, because I just think it was a really tough thing to learn for my mom.
Thank you for sharing that, Cody.
Isn't that a crazy story?
Yes, it is. And it's a lot to think about there. Can you take us into next week
Yes.
on what we're going to do next week? I think this week we went deep, but what's going to happen next week?
Next week, time to look ahead for next week's episode. Don't forget that you can watch all episodes on Paramount Plus and that you can catch new episodes of NCIS on CBS. So next week on Off Duty, the team investigates when an ambulance carrying the body of a Marine who recently died explodes without warning. However, things take a turn when Ducky confirms that DNA lifted from the body doesn't match the dead Marine, resulting in the team launching an investigation into who is responsible. Boom! There goes the boom. Ready or not, it's season 3, episode 16, Family Secret. Oof.